To discuss this further in studio is Richard D. North from the Institute of Economic Affairs. He was one of the first people to write about climate change. Good to see you, Richard D. North. Thanks for joining us. So do you think that President Bush is catching up with you at last?
Well, I think he was always a little more serious about this than people supposed. I mean, especially in Europe, he was a hate figure because he didn't like the Kyoto Protocol process. And I think he was right, in a way, to think that that was not very good for America. And I don't think it would have made much difference what American president we had about that. None of them have liked the Kyoto Protocol. I think what will happen next is peculiar. I mean, the next president may decide that he wants to make different class of noise than President Bush has. But the realities of the thing matter. I mean, Bush has the merit, at least, of not pretending that he can do a huge amount. European politicians, our own politicians, are a little inclined to say, we will achieve these reductions in emissions by that date. And the fact is they're nowhere near doing it. They're nowhere near being likely to achieve it. There's something realistic about Bush's approach, which in that sense at least is attractive.
Well, it was interesting that he did actually pick up quite a lot of the European rhetoric, if one can frame it that way this afternoon. He was saying, let this be the generation that stood up and did something. And there has been a significant shift in his language, if nothing else, I suppose.
Well, I mean, to that extent, I slightly worry about him, because this generation, I'm pretty sure, at least a middle-aged generation, will not be the one that makes a difference. This generation of politicians will make a lot of noise and do a tiny amount. The voters are not up for 80% reductions in climate emissions by 2050. They're nowhere close to addressing that. We will make tiny, cheap, convenient moves in terms of policy. And if science and politicians can deliver, especially if science can deliver a lot in the next 30 years, that would be great. But voters won't. And up till now, at least, Bush's scepticism, I think, has been really rather realistic.
Well, it's interesting because he touched very strongly on the issue of clean technology. I mean, it is his belief that you can both conquer climate change and make money out of it. I mean, is that realistic? I mean, presumably it is utterly reliant on the scientists coming up with the technology in time for us to make a difference.
I'm a bit sceptical. I mean, you know, the recent Stern report said that we could achieve a huge amount on 1% of hit on economic growth. Other people say, like Bush is saying, well, perhaps we could even make money while tackling this. I mean, frankly, who knows? 80% reductions in carbon footprint in anything like under a generation or two is a massive technological challenge.
But it's right to be ambitious, surely. I mean, if you really want to, you've got to take the voters with you. If it is something in which you believe firmly, and we know that there are leaders who are taking that position now, the targets might be ambitious, but what is wrong with that? Even if they don't meet them entirely?
What's wrong with... There is something to be said for making grand noises. But I think it becomes dishonest to pretend that voters are prepared to make big changes, prepared to spend huge amounts of money, prepared to take huge tax hits, prepared to really adjust their lifestyles. I think to be realistic, we have to accept that climate change is going to unfold in large measure. And what happens in the next 20 years won't much dent what that unfolding turns out to be. And I think it's politically naive, practically dishonest to pretend that voters are going to be up for these huge changes. So I don't like it when political rhetoric runs way ahead of what I see my fellow citizens being likely to stomach.
Okay, Richard D. North from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Good to see you this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.